Good evening. If you could please take your seats, we'll be starting soon. Okay. Good evening. My name is Cassie Denbo, and I'm the co-chair of Community Service for Village Liaisons. On behalf of Seton Hall University and Village Liaisons, we'd like to welcome you to this evening's debate. And now, I will pass the mic to Lindy Wilson from the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Hello. First, I want to thank tonight's candidates for being willing to once again, for some of them, and brand new volunteer for public service. This is a thankless job a lot of the time, and we appreciate that people want to give of their time and talents. And then I want to thank the people in the audience and the people watching at home and the people watching at a later date for wanting to participate in our democracy, because showing up is the most important thing for all of us. If you are interested in helping to support these type of events, you're more than welcome to join the League of Women Voters, and we have registration materials out by the front door. Also, if you look at your handout, there is a website where you can download the Vote by Mail application. Those applications are due by May 3rd. You can print them at home, or we have some outside, and then you don't have to be physically present at your polling place. You no longer need a reason to do that. The actual election day is May 10th, so if you choose not to do vote by mail, please make sure you get to the polls. And now I would like to introduce our moderator, Michelle Bobrow, who is going to be taking care of the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. Good evening. I am Michelle Bobrow, a member of the League of Women Voters of Maplewood and a vice president of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. Let me first ask you to turn off your cell phones and any other electronic devices. The League is a trusted, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong. As a League member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role that has a great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you are interested in learning about how you can make a similar impact, I encourage you to pick up some of the League's information on our website at lwvnj.org. League places an emphasis on voting. Voter registration drives, registrations in high schools and here at your college, and efforts to streamline voter registration laws are all a continuing part of League's activities. Other voter service projects, such as providing information on the candidates' positions and an explanation of the ballot question, are part of every election and are distributed through local and state leagues. The League wants everyone to vote and be confident that our votes will count, but also wants voters to be informed. So remember to study your sample ballot or mail-in ballot carefully before voting. Through its 91-year history, the League has been a voice for sound government practices. This commitment will prevail in the century and beyond. League has served to inform voters by holding candidates' nights, which are fair and balanced, political but nonpartisan, unbiased, to educate voters, conducted under strictly nonpartisan guidelines. Tonight you will hear from the candidates for the South Orange Trustees and for Village President. The two candidates running for Village President are Janine Bauer and Alex Torpy. We are starting tonight with the Village Trustee candidates, Deborah Davis Ford, Howard Levison, and Mark Rosner. The format is as follows. Each will present a statement of up to 3 minutes, and then we'll answer 2 prepared questions, 1 minute each. The candidates will then answer for 2 minutes a prepared question randomly drawn. The candidates will begin in alphabetical order, and then we'll rotate. The timekeepers will hold up cards, orange for 1 minute, yellow for 30 seconds, and red for stop, although the candidates may finish a sentence, but not a paragraph when the stop sign comes up. And I'll tell you about the village candidate presidents when they, at their time, there's a special format for that. And then at the end, we have a time for questions from the audience. There are index cards that are available for you to write questions, so if you would like to do so, please do that, and people from the League of Women Voters or village liaisons will be around to collect your questions. And now, the trustees' candidates. We're going to start in alphabetical order with a 3-minute opening statement. Ms. Davis-Ford.
Good evening, my fellow South Orange residents. I'm proud and humbled by the experience of the last 4 years as your trustee. I was determined to bring new and positive energy to the local government, improve the quality of our community, and create a transparent government. As a member of Pure Progress, I believe that we have lived up to our motto, getting it done. In the next 4 years as an South Orange trustee, I want to build upon all the success we've had as a governor body, and I hope to continue to contribute to the vitality of South Orange and address major challenges. It is a fact that South Orange has dedicated and talented employees. As chair of the Legal and Personnel Committee, I initiated the hiring of a consultant for staff development and training. A program was implemented that ensures that village staff receives regular evaluations from their department heads or supervisors, and also promote a focus on customers and achieve even a higher level of performance. Seton Hall is a vital part of South Orange, and I had the responsibility of revitalizing the South Orange-Seton Hall partnership. Both Seton Hall and the South Orange government recognize that we have a symbiotic relationship, and it is to our benefit to integrate both communities. We have achieved some success, but we have identified many other areas for improvement. I know that nothing is more important to the South Orange residents than public safety. South Orange police and fire departments are considered one of the best in Essex County. As a member of the Public Safety Committee, I have supported many initiatives, including the installation of videos in our cars. During my tenure, we were aggressively tackling our fiscal challenges and scheduled numerous public budget hearings. As a result, we reduced operating expenses without affecting services, leveraged the shared services, brought down village debt, and created a downtown master plan. South Orange is an incredible neighborhood, historic, a destination for arts, culture, recreation. I'm humbled by my 4 years of experience as trustee. No one knew 4 years ago we were about to enter into the worst recession since the Great Depression. Despite those challenges, Pure Progress and I, as a member of the team, have accomplished a lot. There's still more to do. I'm a proud member and humbled as a trustee. I ask that you vote for me and the Pure Progress team on May 10th. Roll B.
Thank you. Mr. Levison?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. I as well would like to thank everyone for coming out this evening to discuss and debate issues and questions about governing our village. Pure Progress is a team of professionals who have experience and proven record in both the private and public sectors. Over the past 4 years, we have made transformative structural changes in government operations that provide long-term sustainable improvements that have, as a result, reduced expenses. As chair of the Finance and Information Technology Committee, I have introduced a number of these structural changes, and in part through the use of information technology. I developed an information technology strategic plan that was passed by resolution, providing a roadmap that sets in motion these structural changes. Additionally, structural changes are being implemented through our Shared Services Committee, for which I co-chair. We have planned and implemented projects including a successful shared court, shared outsourced contracts for lawn cutting, shared animal control officer, vehicle repair by Maplewoods Mechanics, and a memorandum of understanding was passed last evening for our code enforcement. In energy conservation, we sought and obtained energy grants, initiated a new gas lamp igniter technology that is now being deployed within the village. Installation in our buildings of energy-saving devices such as CFLs and proximity sensors, planned solar alternatives, and change some of our recycling and solid waste disposal processes. I can go on, but let me close by stating that Janine provides, as village president, the continuity to sustain the Pure Progress momentum, and we look forward to your vote on May 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rosner?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the village liaisons from Seton Hall for sponsoring this debate, and a great venue for it. Personally, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve another 4 years and do my best to improve the village. It's been a great pleasure for the past 12 years, and I do look forward to another 4 years. While we'd all like to see more progress happening sooner, the economy has definitely impacted some decisions. In the last 4 years, we've completely changed the way we review the budget, as well as implement changes. We've reviewed every line of the budget in public meetings, usually with members of the Citizen Budget Advisory Committee in attendance. Every dollar we've saved in 1 year has saved dollars in future years, because these are structural changes. We've cut the number of full-time employees without cutting services by using outsourcing, sharing services, and a variety of other tools to help minimize tax increases. We've reduced the real operating expenses in our budget for 2 years in a row, maybe 3, I think it is now, and our tax increases are solely attributed to increases from the state pension and health care, two things we have no control over. The board over the last 4 years has worked together to add parking spaces for commuters, shoppers, and employees, and actually have increased all 3 areas. At the same time, we've helped eliminate non-residents from parking on our residential streets, and that's talking about commuters who are parking from other towns. This year, I'm running with Howie, Deborah, and Janine Bauer, who is running for village president. As you know, there is no opposition candidate for the position of trustee, which can only mean one of 2 things. Everyone is thrilled with the job we're doing, or nobody wants to do this job. But it is a job that we're willing to do, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to do it again. As they both have pointed out, we're looking to continue for another 4 years. And one of the things that we're going to find out about, that we need to know about, is you have to have the experience to manage people, to manage the budget, to manage over a $30 million budget, 200 employees, including full and part-time employees, contract negotiations, and we think Janine has the experience to lead the village for the next 4 years. So I thank everyone for coming and hope you vote for Pure Progress and Row B.
Thank you very much. We now have 2 distinct questions that have been prepared. Each candidate will get 1 minute to answer, 1 minute each to answer these questions. The first question is, what specific accomplishment have you personally been responsible for leading over the past 4 years that you are proudest of? Mr. Levison, Ms. Davis-Ford, and Mr. Rosner, in that order. Mr. Levison?
Yeah, thank you. There are a number of accomplishments that I've taken the lead on, which I would like to list rather than being a singular accomplishment. Providing a focused review of costs by understanding the internal processes for potential structural improvements, shared services, information technology, and alternate sourcing. Provided and introduced an information technology strategic plan that sets a roadmap for future structural improvements through the use of technology. Initiated a project that will implement a device on our gas lamps that turn them off during the day and reignite them in the evening. And we're now in the process of prototyping them, which will ultimately hold down our energy costs and will save the environment by not burning and having CO2. making the village properties greener through obtaining and implementing energy efficiency through grants, implementing alternative purchasing decisions such as the elimination of incandescent lamps, purchasing hybrid vehicles and biodiesel fuel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis Ford.
Since I only have 1 minute, I will focus on one item. Coming from the corporate world and specializing in staffing and employee development, I understand, and so do the Board of Trustees and you, that people are our greatest resources. So I leverage my employee and human resources development experience to ensure that a consultant could come in and train and develop our department heads and our leaders to make sure that our employees felt valued, wanted, and also to give them the opportunity to prove their skills so they could better serve our residents. Again, this is just a beginning, and I look forward to looking for other ways that we can afford to invest in the employees of the village so that you can get a better return on your taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Rosner.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say that any one trustee does accomplishments by themselves. It's something that we work together on, and we vet out things at other committee meetings or conference agenda, and as everyone knows, you need 4 votes for something to pass. So one of the great accomplishments, especially the last 2 years, is that this board has learned to work very well together. We passed over 1,200 resolutions, 100 ordinances, and so forth and so on. One of my votes that I've always been proud of that goes back more than 4 years was dealing with the ShopRite site, for those who remember, and leading to condemnation and taking over that property. While it took much longer than anybody wanted, we now have Eden Gourmet and the Avenue apartments behind it, which I think has clearly been a winner for the town, and one of those things that I'm very happy and proud of that took place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Second question. What votes over the past 4 years have you disagreed with the most, and why? Mr. Rosner, Mr. Levison, and Ms. Davis Ford. Mr. Rosner?
One of the, over the past 4 years, one of the votes that we've worked very hard to do is with the parking, and commuter parking has always been an issue, and one of the things from other towns have found that our town's a great town to park in. And through working with New Jersey Transit and coming up with solutions for what they looked at, because they'd done studies, we went ahead and figured out a way to limit the amount of non-residents parking on our residential streets. And there were streets such as North Ridgewood Road, Beach Spring, Tilloo, some other streets. And we passed an ordinance which limited parking within 3/8 of a mile of the train station, and it worked an amazing effort. And it was an effort that we put forth with many residents. We had several meetings over 6 months with over 30 local residents, and it was one of those votes that worked out very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Levison?
Yeah, thank you. There are only a few times that I have voted no, but I think it's more important to understand how we agree unanimously on the majority of our votes. We are a team that comes to a consensus through open discussion that recognize member concerns. These discussions occur at different levels, from seeking input from our standing committee meetings, from both the public and our professional staff that provide research and facts. Once there is a consensus at this level, a recommendation for discussion at the full board conference agenda meeting is made, which generally leads to an ordinance or resolution. And once voted on, again, in majority of the times, we are unanimous.
Thank you. Ms. Davis Ford?
I'd like to echo my 2 colleagues that we spend a great deal of time in committees and discussions really vetting a decision or an ordinance. And so on most of the decisions, we pretty much have voted affirmative. I think I have my biggest challenge as far as struggles and differing is in the arts, that I may disagree with some of my colleagues at times and some of the organizations that we support. I think all of our views are legitimate, and in the end, it is a democracy, and I respect the majority vote of 4 or more. We are individuals, we voice our differences, but we respectfully also respect those who don't agree with us. And the majority vote rules.
Thank you. The next section has to do with 3 questions which were drawn by each trustee, and they will answer in the order in which they drew. Ms. Davis-Ford will answer. How do you view Seton Hall and the town's relationship now? What areas could be improved moving into the future? And that's 2 minutes.
The relationship between Seton Hall and the town has improved from when I began as a trustee 4 years ago. In fact, I was charged to breathe life into the Seton Hall South Orange Partnership. And we have made some improvements. It's important that we're 2 communities that we have resources that we can benefit from, but we also have to respect the needs of the students and also the residents who live and surround Seton Hall. I'd like to recognize several people who are responsible for some of the success we've made. Chair of the Seton Hall University Relations is Ian Miller. He's in the audience. And also the Seton Hall students, and he's a resident of South Orange, and also the village liaisons who really invested a lot of time and effort to really take on this big but most important and valuable challenge of building a strong relationship between Seton Hall and South Orange.
Thank you very much. Mr. Levison, what steps can be taken to revitalize Irvington Avenue? Can Seton Hall students play a role in this?
Yeah, thank you. We sought and obtained Seton Hall participation in the development of our vision plan that calls for economic development of Irvington Avenue as a major corridor between the village and the campus. The plan calls for mixed-use development of off-campus student housing with integrated retail. There is also an opportunity for creating entrepreneurial development through the university's business school with the creation of business incubators in that zone. Yes, the student support becomes critical to the success. While a challenging request, students must be willing to support local businesses that meet their needs.
Thank you. Mr. Rosner, explain the current efforts on improving village security and what else you would like to have implemented.
Village security is one of those, public safety, one of those things we've worked hard on for many years. The most recent efforts have been getting the police officers we have on the streets. Over the past few years, those efforts included freeing up police officers to be on the street, police officers that were doing jobs that weren't typically that we think of as police officers. Police dispatching used to be done by police officers, the records room, and so forth, and we probably freed up the equivalent to 4 full-time employees, so the police officers are on the street where they should be. One of the disappointments I've had is reinstituting the bike patrol in the downtown, which is something we used to have, and I'd like to see work with the police department and having the bike patrol re-implemented, because I think it's very effective to have somebody in the downtown area who can maneuver quickly and help out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your time and your views. We're going to go to the next portion now with the candidates for village president, but they will be back later for questions from the audience. Thank you. The format for the village president candidates is as follows. They will each have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Then there are questions prepared by the sponsors with a time of 2 minutes for each to answer each question. The timekeepers will note 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop. and the candidates will have 2 minutes each for closing statements. So, we're starting in alphabetical order. Ms. Bauer, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Janine Bauer, and I'm running for village president. My top priority as village president of South Orange will be reducing the tax burden on the residents. Reducing the tax burden will require merging and sharing services, outsourcing, and restructuring the delivery of services to achieve a more cost-effective method. My Pure Progress team, Mark Rosner, Howard Levinson, and Deborah Davis Ford, and I have an established track record of sharing services and reducing costs and the operating budget of the village. For example, the Municipal Court and Violations Bureau with Maplewood is saving over $100,000 a year. And there were other services. And just last night, an interlocal services agreement for code enforcement services was agreed upon at the Board of Trustees meeting. So we have an established track record on that. We're also very familiar and knowledgeable about the budget. I myself volunteered as a Citizens Budget Advisory Committee member back in 2003. I've sat on the Finance Committee and attended the budget workshops for the last 2 years as a trustee. Another important priority is public safety. I'm tough on crime. I was a prosecutor for 3 years in an urban city. I understand how police departments work, how the courts work, and how the criminal justice system works. I plan to work hand in glove with our police department, which is one of the most effective police departments in Essex County, and to give them the tools that they need to ensure that they can do their job and do it even more effectively. Finally, downtown development is critical to the future success of South Orange. We've had a terrific response from professional developers to our request for proposals for the 3rd Street and Valley Street site, which the village owns, and I expect applications for development for that site, as well as the former Bifus site on South Orange Avenue, to come before the planning board. There again, I have the experience and knowledge to guide us to a successful future. I sat on the planning board for 6 years between 2000 and 2006 and was responsible for shepherding major developments through the planning board, while my trustee colleague Mark Rosner was the Planning and Zoning Board chair on the trustee board, including Eden Market and the Avenue, the apartment building on Bose Avenue. So I have the experience and knowledge to lead this village. I can hit the ground running, and I ask for your vote, Row B, Pure Progress, on May 10th, along with my Pure Progress running mates. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone coming out tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and the village liaisons in Seton Hall for hosting this. And I also just want to take a second to recognize and thank the trustees who all, even though we may have disagreements on policy at times, which I think is important for a government, that everyone puts in a lot of time to make this town a better place. And I think everyone in this room appreciates and respects that. But I want to start by just kind of outlining and putting in perspective the position of village president. Now, aside from overseeing the municipal staff and budget, the village president is responsible for creating guidelines and setting the direction of the Board of Trustees, for setting a public agenda and creating a long-term strategic vision for the town and building community support and investment for that vision. Representing the town's different constituency groups between residents, business owners, municipal employees, the trustees, and obviously the university community, and making sure that any decision that is made, all of those interest groups are at the table. 4 is to promote and market this town, not only to communicate what's going on in the local government to our residents, but also going outside of our borders and making sure that people who don't live in South Orange know what we're up to. There's so many incredible things happening in our community. And the last is being able to make a serious time commitment to be there for this community, whether it's responding in an emergency situation as village president, or whether it is holding open office hours so any resident can come in and talk to you. By contrast, the Board of Trustees is a little bit more of a legislative body, using their specific expertise in policy areas to craft and vote on ordinances, a vote that actually the village president does not have except in a tiebreaker situation. And that difference in roles and responsibilities is why I chose to run for village president. While the current Board of Trustees does a good job with legislative work, what I feel we need is direction and leadership with a vision that creates and crafts that vision and gets the board behind to work towards a public-supported, invested community plan. The village president should be setting the priorities and values and goals, and the Board of Trustees and our municipal departments fall under that and work towards those goals for our community. Now, before we get into the questions and answers, I also want to remind everyone of something very important about this election. I'm not running for village president to replace any of the skills or experiences or perspectives that our current trustees bring to the table. Every single elected official that's in this room right now will remain an elected official regardless of what happens on May 10th. Instead, I'm running for village president because I think we need something different. We need something additional. And we need someone with a new vision, a new perspective, new energy, and a focus that is bringing our community to the table and making sure that whether it's a development project, whether it's improving public safety, that our community is behind every single decision that our local government makes.
Thank you. We are now coming to questions which have been prepared by the sponsors. Each candidate will answer each question 2 minutes each, and we're going to alternate. So Mr. Torpy will start with the first question. What steps can be taken to decrease crime statistics in South Orange? What else can be done to increase real and perceived safety in South Orange downtown? And you have 2 minutes each.
That's a great question, and there are two different components to looking at improving public safety and perceived public safety in this town. The first is preventing crime. We need to provide focused and targeted bike patrols and foot patrols so that our officers can interface with the neighborhoods that they're working in. We need to increase lighting in areas of town that have been identified as being poorly lit, which is something that we've done with Seton Hall on almost an annual basis. We need to expand our support for our neighborhood watch programs. Ask our community relations officer at the police department how many arrests have been made from tips from Neighborhood Watch, and you'll see the value that these programs provide for this community. We need to look at surveillance cameras downtown, but only with the understanding that if we do implement surveillance cameras, that we do so with the comprehensive privacy policy that not only doesn't limit the privacy or restrict the privacy of our residents, but actually sets an example for other governments on how to do this the right way. And we need to fully implement electronic reporting and electronic ticketing for our police officers. They spend too much time behind a desk and on paperwork, and we need to put them on the road, on a bike, and in neighborhoods where the crime is happening. The second piece of this is the marketing. It's great if we can solve our public safety problems, but if people don't know that, then how much value is that going to bring in terms of injecting new business to our downtown? So although we have to focus on the policing of these neighborhoods and making sure that our officers have as much time as possible to spend on patrolling, to spend on investigations, and to spend on community relations, we need to make a focus of marketing our success, not only to our community, but outside of our community. We need our village president to be in the press talking up every day how great our neighborhood watch programs are, how great our police department is, and that we're solving these problems that we face.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer.
The most important thing that we can do with respect to public safety is to tackle the areas where public safety needs improvement. And for this village right now, across all parameters, crime is down with the exception of burglary for last year and related thefts. And for the first quarter of 2011, burglary is down 2. What that means is patrols need to be focused in the areas where historically those incidents occur. That doesn't necessarily mean bike patrols. It doesn't necessarily mean any particular mode of patrols. It's more of a geographic question. Right now we have generally 42 officers out in the shifts throughout the week, and they patrol in a fixed area over and over and over in their patrol cars. We had great success in areas, and again, hand in hand with the neighborhood watch groups, which I compliment very much. We had great success where the officers were on foot in neighborhoods, in yards, tracking down burglaries, and working with the state police lab to track the forensic evidence so that we could arrest especially young juveniles who were starting their criminal career, make sure that they ended it shortly, and solve those crimes. So it needs to be very targeted. It doesn't need to be everything, particularly with the level of staffing that we have, which, by the way, far exceeds most municipalities with our size and population. So that's the primary thing that we need to do. In terms of downtown, the most important thing to do is to have activities downtown, redesign Spiota Park so that it can host more events, have a more welcoming atmosphere on Sloane Street and the surrounding areas, have musical events, which the Board of Trustees voted for, and Main Street South Orange carried out very successfully last year, Downtown After Sundown, and continue in that vein.
Next question. What steps can be taken to revitalize Irvington Avenue, and how can Seton Hall students play a role? Ms. Bauer.
Irvington Avenue is a typical neighborhood business district. It should be thought of as a neighborhood business district with services that serve those neighborhoods. And I think that the kind of zoning changes that we need for Irvington Avenue are the ones that will support the residential area, support families and family values in the Irvington area, and support those businesses, attract the type of businesses through a tenant recruitment specialist that we intend to hire as part of my administration, so that those are businesses that people want to go to, both students and residents in the area. I think that is the principal area where we need to focus on student safety. There already is a rather large development there with commercial stores right over the border in Newark and Irvington area, and a lot of students are going there, and they're in jeopardy of their public safety. So that's one of the areas where patrols need to be focused.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy.
Irvington Ave is a great example of an area of our town that has so much potential that is yet to be tapped into. There are three main components to improving the business district on Irvington Ave. The first is looking at the business climate in this town. What are we doing to incentivize new businesses to move here? If you ask a business owner, is South Orange the easiest place to open a business? The answer is no. If you ask them whether South Orange is the cheapest place to open a business, the answer is no. If you ask them whether they think South Orange is the safest place to open a business, the answer, again, is no. So what we've done is create a situation where we make it very easy for a potential business owner who's looking to move to a suburban West Essex town to cross South Orange off the list. We need to fix that immediately, and we need to involve our business owners in that process. The second point is public safety, which relates to the first, and it's that we need to make sure that not only do shoppers know that this is a safe place that you can walk around at night, which, talking to Irvington Ave business owners and Irvington Ave residents, that is not the perception right now, that is a place where you can just walk around at 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And we really need to make sure we get a handle on public safety before we can improve that. And the third component is that we need to better incorporate Irvington Ave into our smart growth plans for the future. And we need to very carefully look at who is shopping in that area and what businesses we are going to bring in there. Seton Hall University is a totally and absolute integral part of that process. I was actually just at a neighborhood association cleanup a couple weekends ago, and aside from the Seton Village Neighborhood Association, which organized the event, there were Seton Hall students there as well. And to see Seton Hall students and residents working together, those are the kind of programs we need to support. We need to make sure our residents know and the students know that the village is behind these two communities working together to better their public spaces in their neighborhoods. And another great example of a Seton Hall and South Orange partnership was the Community Emergency Response Team program that also increases public safety awareness. And that was a class that was held at Seton Hall where residents and students were both in the class and worked together to improve their community's safety.
Thank you. Next question. What progress is being made on the vision plan? What steps could be taken to open up parking opportunities while still maintaining the aesthetics of downtown South Orange? Mr. Torpy.
The vision plan is an example of a process where I think we could have taken the $250,000 that we paid to consultants to develop this plan and invested that money directly back into our community. When I went to a vision plan meeting that was actually held in this very room a couple years ago, The representative from the company that's leading the vision plan made a joke that has sort of stuck with me over the years. And he was talking about the tennis courts by the South Orange Middle School and made a comment that, well, my friend at Maplewood High said nobody plays on those tennis courts anyway. I didn't know what to think. First of all, as we all know, it's Columbia High School, and that's actually where Columbia High School practices. So I don't know where this person got his information from, but to see that person being the director of the future of the growth of our town was very disheartening. I would rather see that energy come from the community. I worked on a vision planning process in the town of Amherst, and they did it very differently than South Orange did. They spent a lot less money, and what they did was hire a consulting company that trained volunteers to facilitate workshops. And I was one of those workshop facilitators, and what we did was we started the meetings in a room like this where there would be 200-300 people, and then we broke up into small groups of 12 to 15 people. We provided maps and surveys and questions. We brought all that information together. The company aggregated that information, digitized it, gave it to the town, and said, hey, town planning board, this is what your community wants. And I think we have the energy and the knowledge in this community to have saved that money, invested it into our town, and created smart growth plans that truly reflect what our community wants. Parking is a great example of another area where we need improvement. It's almost at the point where you almost want to make t-shirts that say, I visited South Orange and all I got was this crummy parking ticket. Coming downtown is a risk. If you leave your meter for a couple minutes, you're likely to get a parking ticket. And I want to ask the question, what does that do to first-time visitors to this town? They came to go to a bank, to go to the pizza place, to go to the dry cleaners, and they left with a slice of pizza and a $40 parking ticket. So what I want to caution us to do and make sure we think about when we're looking at these plans is how are we incentivizing behavior and what are we going to do to bring people into our downtown?
Thank you. Ms. Bauer.
If Mr. Torpy had been at any of the other meetings of the vision plan, he would know that the procedure that he just outlined was exactly what the vision plan and the Board of Trustees did. We broke down into very small group workshops. We identified exactly what we wanted. There were hundreds of people involved, including all of the businesses. And I just want to refer back to something else he said. He said, if you ask the businesses this, if you ask the businesses that, what's the survey? What's the scientific survey? Because we did a very scientific process with the vision plan. And this is the vision plan that does reflect what the business owners as well as the residents and taxpayers of South Orange want. One of the things that we need is more parking. One of the things that's holding back our business district is small footprint stores, which is typical of an older downtown, and not enough parking. And parking will be one of my chief priorities because it's necessary, a critical ingredient for future downtown development and success. We will be incorporating additional parking, both public parking as well as, of course, residential and commercial parking in the 3rd Street and Valley Street development. That RFQ has already been responded to, as I mentioned, by professional developers, and there were a number of other parking areas that were identified in the vision plan and which need to move forward. We're currently working with New Jersey Transit and whoever the future concessionaire is for the New Jersey Transit lot to figure out how to add parking to that. So vision plan is definitely moving forward.
Thank you very much. Next question. What will you do to ensure historic sites in South Orange are protected and preserved? What is your position on establishing a historic commission? What other alternatives would you propose? Ms. Bauer.
I'm in favor of establishing an historic preservation commission in South Orange. In fact, when I was an appointed trustee in 2007, Trustee Rosner and I introduced jointly an ordinance for a historic preservation commission. I expect that to be one of the achievements if I'm elected. I'm looking forward to it. We had a very good and professional study done that had a lot of input from residents, not just the Montrose Historic District Association, but many of the rest of us who live in identified but not designated historic areas. I also lived in the town that I lived in before I moved to South Orange in 1993 in an historic district. I know how to do it well, how not to do it, and I feel very confident that with my trustee colleagues we can achieve consensus and move forward. Also, I plan to landmark additional resources because there are many historic resources that we could get grants from the State Historic Preservation Commission and other state and federal grant sources for, so that we could fix up and repair our historic buildings, which are in poor repair right now, and we'll be able to do that if we get them designated on the state or national register.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy?
Obviously, history is one of the most important things South Orange has to offer. And if you go around town and you look at the buildings between Village Hall, our schools, churches, the Baird Center, the library, the Kennett Building, there's so many buildings that have such a rich history. And actually on the library board, which I serve on, we're working on a project right now that's actually really exciting as a way to try and bring that history into the 21st century. We're creating a wiki site that will allow historical societies in the town to add all of their physical documents onto this website. And basically what we want to do is create almost a hive mind of all of the history that exists in this town through photos and videos, all the historical maps and documents that exist. We're going to try and bring online so that we can give that information to anybody. And our historical societies play a really important role in this town. And if a historical commission is how they feel the best way to move forward and accomplish their goals, that's absolutely something that our local government should be considering.
Thank you. Next question has to do with recycling. What environmental initiatives can we adopt from neighboring communities, and how do they make recycling easier? Mr. Torpy.
Well, I think one of the places where we could start as far as making recycling easier is open the recycling center more days a week. When I went down and I spoke with public works employees and when I spoke with public works managers from other towns, you'll learn a lot about how the process works. And you'll see that the way the recycling center works is our public works employees actually spend a lot of their day down at the public works garage. Although they do go around town and fix things in the streets, they also have many tasks which they perform at the recycling center. And if you look at the way that job works and how the responsibilities of the recycling center, you actually see that having the recycling center open 1 or 2 more days a week would not be a burden for the employees because they're already down there. And a lot of these things that are talked about as cost-saving measures actually end up not being as cost-saving as they originally appear. So the biggest point for recycling would be let's talk to our municipal employees, make sure that when we're doing something like managing our recycling center, that we're doing so with the expertise of the people who do the job on a day-to-day basis. I think one of the things that we can do to improve the environmental record of the town is to digitize as many processes as possible. We fill out so much paperwork from our police department. They spend easily an hour and a half a day filing reports on paper that have to be then entered into a computer by somebody. So not only would we save money, if we can reduce the amount of paper usage and physical transportation, where someone has to actually take a paper in 2011, someone has to take a piece of paper, drive it to somebody else who then types it into a computer, I think we can do a lot to improve the environmental standing of this town.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
Probably the most important environmental initiative that we can adopt from a neighboring town that would increase recycling is what's called single-stream recycling. It's already in effect in Maplewood and many other towns. Basically, it means that you don't have to source separate, you don't have to keep everything in your vestibule or on your porch until you get to recycling day or go down to the recycling center. You can throw everything into a single container. It's picked up and it's basically sorted by truck, and when it gets down to a transfer station or a county recycling center. What that would mean for South Orange is that recycling would go way up. Right now, the Department of Public Works estimates that no more than 50% of us recycle. For a very sustainably oriented town, that's actually a very low percentage, and we could pick that up significantly. Some other environmental initiatives that I think we should borrow from our neighboring communities in Essex, Union, and Passaic counties are a LEED ordinance, for instance, where developers get a density bonus or other incentives to develop their buildings in an energy-conserving, environmentally sustainable way. And there are a number of other things that I would like to pursue as part of the master plan and on the planning board that will reward developers for doing developments correctly, and I look forward to doing that if elected.
Thank you. Next question. Which departments being considered for shared services would you consider to be top priorities? Which ones not currently being considered do you feel would be good candidates for shared services with other towns or with the county? Ms. Bauer.
I think that all departments in South Orange are candidates for shared or merged services. I think the obvious ones that need to follow, as I mentioned, are code enforcement, where we just did an interlocal services agreement on Monday, recreation and health, should be the next to follow. Recreation is a perfect opportunity. I think that, like Morris County and other counties that are following around the state now, regionalized fire departments and police departments is the next step. I think it makes much more sense to do that on a county level or a regional level than it does with the town next door. With the town next door, it makes more sense to do a department like recreation because you don't want to be schlepping all over for a soccer game or this or that. We're very fortunate to already have a shared school district. I don't think a lot of us thought of it that way before shared services became a popular phrase, but we already have a shared school district, and therefore all the things that flow from that make sense to do. So there's no department that I don't think of as a priority in terms of saving taxpayers' money and delivering services more efficiently.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy?
I think one of the departments that has always been on the discussion board in terms of shared services is our fire department. And when we talk about public safety, which is the biggest part of our budget, that fire and police come up all the time. And I want to do something which is make sure to create a distinction between these two services when we talk about this. And that's something like a fire department lends itself towards potentially sharing with another. If you look at the way a fire department works, in this area in New Jersey, if the fire department responds to a 2-alarm fire, which basically means that there's a working fire, 2 other departments are called automatically. That happens, so you will never see a fire in this town or West Orange or Irvington or Maplewood where there's only 1 department. You'll see 3 at all of them. So that already happens. Now, if you look at the way South Orange Fire Department has organized itself, they're pretty efficient already. So my suspicion is that other departments would have more to gain from the sharing than we would, but it's still something we definitely need to look into. However, when we talk about police, it's a different story. Police are proactively patrolling our streets 24 hours a day, not something that I've ever seen a fire truck do. And we need to be very careful about talking about outsourcing our police department or regionalizing our police department. The police department and their skill set is very important, that they're familiar with our town and they're familiar with what looks right and what looks wrong. Our police officers that I've gone out on so many calls with before, they know this town like the back of their hand. And going into someone's house who you've never been to before and having a police officer who's been in this town for 35 years or 30 years who knows exactly what the situation is really helpful and provides a huge service to our community. And one of the most important things that we can look at sharing is actually within our town, is our jitney and bus system. We provide a commuter jitney for our residents who go into New York City or Hoboken to work, and then Seton Hall provides a shuttle for their students to get around town. Why we have 2 mutually exclusive bus systems is beyond me, as my conversations with transportation directors in other towns and the people involved in both of those between Seton Hall and South Orange seems to make it that program is actually viable.
Thank you. Next question deals with the community and students. How do you view Seton Hall and South Orange's current relationship? How specifically would you improve the relationship moving into the future, including student involvement in village government? Mr. Torpy.
Well, I think having a debate like this, a municipal debate at Seton Hall, is a really great step towards building this relationship. But I don't think there's any misconception about how tense this relationship is right now. And a lot of Seton Hall students put in a lot of time and a lot of effort in trying to bridge that gap a little bit. And I don't see the same energy and response back from our local government. If you look at a couple years ago, there was an ordinance that was passed in the town that levied a fee on Seton Hall students. Now, the legislation from the state that would have actually allowed that ordinance to be enforced was never passed and was never going to pass. However, an ordinance was passed that said that Seton Hall students were such a drain on this community that we needed to impose a fee on part-time and full-time students to make up for that. And the Seton Hall students that I spoke to, considering the fact that the ordinance could never even be enforced, felt really disengaged from the town when they heard about that. So a first step would be to not pass ordinances that can never be enforced that really sort of put students on the exclusive end of our local government. I think as far as looking at the tension that does exist, one of the roots of this problem is that we have residential areas where houses full of college kids live right next to families. And it's a problem of supply and demand in this town. We have so many Seton Hall students and so many young people that live in South Orange that want to live in apartments, but so little apartment housing for them to live in. A lot of students end up living in Newark or in Orange because they can't afford to live in an apartment in South Orange or there isn't one available. And what I would love to see is housing and development plans in downtown South Orange that incorporate younger generation focused housing so that we could try and get some Seton Hall students out of residential areas where families live, get them right into the middle of a downtown, which would allow Seton Hall to market to families and say, hey, we've got new green housing in sort of a trendy urban setting right next to a train station, and then we can use all those apartment housing downtown to leverage new business opportunities as well.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
If developers are interested and are going to make money in student or intergenerational housing, they will come to South Orange just like they will go to other university towns. So far, I've seen very little of that. There is one housing development like that in Newark across the street from NJIT, which serves both Rutgers and NJIT. But frankly, I don't think that we have nearly the demand for that. However, I would certainly welcome any conversations with developers in Seton Hall toward that end. One of the things that I think has most helped our relationship, aside from the good work of the village liaisons, is the Seton Hall partnership work that Deborah Davis Ford and Ian Miller led, along with all the students. They have been engaged as the students have been engaged in village committees and local government activities for a very long time. The very first committee that I ever signed up for was the Main Street South Orange Design Committee, and the design students at South Orange were very successful in persuading business owners to adopt their designs for storefronts, store windows, and that's one of the reasons that we have very attractive store windows even now today in many of the businesses downtown. And that's repeated throughout. I can think of so many committees. Sheena Collum is in the audience. She was a very dynamic leader here, student government leader. She got involved in all of the committees, and she's still very involved in our committees, and was one of the founders of the Citizens Public Safety Committee in the village. So I think the village is very welcoming to students. I personally have always been very welcoming. There's no bigger pirate fan than me. I taught at Seton Hall, at Seton Hall's request, as part of the Environmental Commission. Every Freshman 500 Day, we have the Seton Hall students doing projects. We've integrated their classwork into our projects, the River Greenway being a perfect example.
How do you propose to increase the transparency and accountability of the village government? Ms. Bauer?
I think the primary way that I plan to do that is by having shorter meetings with clearer agendas, make it clearer when people can come to the podium so they don't have to guess as to when a public speaking time would be, to allow electronic communications. There was an idea that a trustee had a few years ago for having a call-in portion. Well, not very many people called in. It was usually just one or two persons. Nowadays, it's very easy to just email in a question, and we could have a portion of that. So as to make the public hearing, which is a required part of every public meeting, to make the public hearing portion more responsive to people who have questions on any particular topic at that time. But the bottom line is to have meetings that are well organized, focused, shorter, and especially to have fewer executive sessions, to limit it to topics that are just involving personnel, contract negotiations, litigation, or something that really has to be discussed in private to protect both of the parties. Those will be my main goals in terms of transparency and accountability.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy?
Before I get into my plans for open government, I do want to say shorter meetings sounds great. I guess my question is, why didn't we do that 2 years ago? My 6 points for open government are very concrete. We talk a lot about open government. We talk a lot about bringing people in and making government accessible. But I want to share a couple concrete action steps that could be taken. The first is that all voting records of every single elected official in this town need to be listed, not in the minutes, but under their local government, right under their name on the local government section of the website. The second is that attendance records of every single elected official need to be listed under their name on their local government page, not buried in the minutes. The third is that we can look at digitizing public documents. Documents that right now have to be requested through the Open Public Records Act can be time-consuming and sometimes labor-intensive for our municipal employees. If we could put that online, we could make the marginal cost of getting a public document from the town nothing. The fourth is that the village should be facilitating and hosting an online discussion forum that is not anonymous but allows people to get involved and actually work towards building better policy. The fifth is that office hours by the village president need to be mandatory, and that as village president, I would encourage my colleagues on the board to do the same. And the last point is that as village president, I would be offering video updates for people, 5-10-minute synopsis after every board meeting saying, here's what we worked on, here's what is on the agenda for next week, and here's how you can get involved. And I just want to make clear that 4 of the points that I just brought up, voting records, attendance records, office hours, and video updates, don't cost anything at all to do. There's no reason why we couldn't have done those a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, or 6 years ago. This is something that we need to do. We need to get our community engaged and involved in our decision-making process, and there is a very, very clear and concrete way to do this, and I plan to do those 4 free things in the first month as village president.
Thank you. The next 2 questions have to do with tax and budget and fiscal policy. First, what is your position on the current levels of village expenses and revenues? What would be a legitimate reason to exceed the 2% cap, which would result in proposing a second question to voters? Mr. Torpey.
Obviously, a lot of work has been done by the board to reduce the expenditures of the village, but I would also point out that property taxes have gone up and that home values are going down, and that's something that we need to very carefully and seriously look at. As far as the 2% cap, we really should try as hard as we can, not only to not exceed a 2% cap, but how do we make a bigger dent in this? Why do we have to just decrease the increase? Are there larger issues that we can look at to try and make our government more efficient? One of the things that a fresh perspective and someone who has not been a public elected official before brings to the table is every time we get involved in a process, every time we look at a budget item, it's, well, why are we doing it this way? Can we try this? That new perspective is extremely valuable for looking at budgets. And the last point I want to make on that is that when we talk about doing capital expenditures, large capital expenditures, for example, looking at renovating Village Hall, those are questions that should probably go to the community. The village right now is saddled with a lot of debt from a development project that went over budget and over schedule, and if we're going to look at spending that kind of money on another development project, we need to make sure our community is 100% behind it and that they've had a chance to voice their concerns or ideas as far as that process goes.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
I wholeheartedly agree. I think we need to have a budget process that includes a lot of public participation. I think we should do that electronically and online. I think we need to have surveys and have people weigh in as to what our budget priorities are. We're facing a big budget gap for next year, and that's one of the reasons why I want to emphasize that my experience in dealing with the budget and in analyzing the budget actually goes back to 2003. Expenditures such as whether we fix Village Hall or not, it was easier in the days where we could expect $1 million or more in a congressional appropriation, but now Congress is saying no more earmarks. So these are major questions. I see it as sort of a bigger version of a Vermont town hall meeting where the citizens come out and decide whether they're going to get a new police car or get a new fire truck or whatever the capital expenditure du jour is, and I think that that's one of the things that we need to do. I think that our expenses and revenue is very well in balance for where we are right now, but as I say, we're facing a big budget gap. Tough choices are going to have to be made, and it's not just about offering more services and digitizing things and using technology and software that's free to communicate better with the people. It's going to be merging services and outsourcing and making a lot of very tough budget choices because the people are demanding that taxes go down. I can't see any reason for exceeding the 2% cap, and that will not happen if I am the village president.
Thank you. What is your position on village support for SOPAC, Main Street South Orange, and the Community Coalition on Race and similar organizations? Ms. Bauer?
My position is that the village government should not be funding directly either individuals or nonprofit organizations out of our direct budget. While I think each of those organizations is extremely meritorious and is vital to continuing our success, and actually the state constitution forbids villages and communities and counties from donating either land or money to individuals or nonprofit corporations. I think that that would best be undertaken by other organizations. For instance, if we create a special improvement district, I think the village is enabled by statute to give to the special improvement district. There'd also be an assessment that would be derived by, decided by business owners, and SOPAC and Main Street South Orange and whatever downtown activities are associated with the current corporations that we give money to, that would come out of the special improvement district. YouthNet, which is another one that would come out of the after-school program that's run jointly by the two towns and the Y, and so on and so forth. Basically, I ran a nonprofit for 12 years, a multi-million-dollar nonprofit based out of New York City. I've never heard of anything like towns donating money. When I did a survey for the Charter Reform Committee, I found out that Summit has given this up, West Orange has given this up, Montclair would like to give it up. It's a trend that's basically going away, that they're just selected, historically favorite nonprofits that are getting money from the village coffers, and that's just a trend that's going to go away. But the organizations are not going away, and I'm fully committed to making sure that they're funded at exactly the same level, if not better, than they are now.
Thank you. It's now time for your closing statements. You have 2 minutes
Excuse me,
each.
do I get to?
You forgot,
Oops.
Mr. Murphy.
How'd you know my answer was going to be that boring? So I guess I want to start by just kind of breaking up SOPAC and the rest of these community organizations. I think they're very different. You know, a lot of people talk about SOPAC and that they're getting a contribution or cash amount from the village every year. And we look at something like a performing arts center, that this isn't going to be a parking authority. They're not going to be bringing in a large amount of revenue on an annual basis. But what they do is allow us to leverage their place as a cultural anchor in downtown to bring in more businesses and residents, shoppers and visitors to our town. So that contribution, which was part of the plan for SOPAC, that the village would support it until it got on its feet, is definitely important to make sure that SOPAC 100% succeeds. The worst case scenario, which I don't think is going to happen, but the worst case scenario would be we have a performing arts center that can't pay back its debt, and that the taxpayers are somehow saddled with that money, and that's something we need to be very careful about. We need to get behind SOPAC and make sure that we're doing everything we can as a village, as residents and community groups to make sure this succeeds, not only for the financial reasons, but because it could add so much culture and value to our community. Looking at the other nonprofits and community groups, I think we should do whatever we can to try and support them without necessarily giving a cash contribution every year. One of the things that makes me a little uncomfortable about funding these organizations is that some of the money goes towards administration, which is used for salaries for people that work on the organizations. And for taxpayer dollars to go towards not volunteer, but community member salaries is something that I definitely think we should take off the table. As far as small contributions in the hundreds and thousands, if we can fund a community group $1,000 and they can provide $100,000 of value to our community, we certainly shouldn't let them fall off the table either. But we should definitely look at ways that we can support them outside of that as a first priority.
Thank you. Please forgive me. It is now time for closing statements. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Torpy.
So we have an opportunity on May 10th. We have an opportunity to change the way our local government operates. Now, instead of asking a question like, what can we do to reduce our property tax bill, we should be asking questions like, what can we do to reduce the total cost of living being a South Orange resident? It's about thinking outside the box, trying a new perspective to work towards a new solution to the same problems that we've had for many years. I think it's about rethinking the way that we operate local government. When people visit here, they always comment on how great South Orange is. But what is usually also said is how absolutely remarkable it could be, especially in regards to our downtown. We have the energy and passion and knowledge in this community to do whatever we want to do, and we see that in some of the community groups we even have just mentioned. But our local government can do a lot more to support that kind of culture, that kind of lifestyle, and that kind of community that all of us as residents want. Throughout my conversations with people over the past couple years and growing up in these towns, what I've realized is that more recently, residents and business owners and students as well have become disengaged and disinvested from our local government process. And I don't even think that's particular to South Orange. We look at towns across the country, counties, state, national, and international levels. People right now in 2011 are questioning the role that government plays in their lives. And I don't think that's that unreasonable, because there is only one thing that is keeping us from doing everything that we want to do, and that is that our leadership does not have a priority of involving the community in decision-making and working towards those goals. That's the kind of leadership that I bring to the table, and that's what I want to do as the next village president of South Orange. So please join me in rethinking leadership and voting row A on May 10th to make our ideas and desires for a change in this community a reality.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
First, my appreciation goes to the League of Women Voters and Seton Hall Liaison for putting this debate together, to the moderator, to Mr. Torpy, to the audience for coming, and to the residents of South Orange that I've had the good fortune to listen to your ideas and your suggestions as I've crisscrossed the village campaigning over the last couple months. The most important thing that really should be on your mind as you consider whom to vote for village president is where are you going to put your investment? South Orange is basically a $30 million corporation. Each one of us is invested in that corporation, as well as in our home and our schools and so on and so forth. I have lived here for the last 18 years. I have a home here. It's my major investment. I raised my family here. I paid my taxes in addition to my taxes every quarter, water, garbage, and sewer. The tax burden is what I have heard voters say as I have knocked on doors and been at the train station and at the bagel place and so on and so forth. And people want to see it come down. They say, you know, my sister lives in Pennsylvania, my brother lives in Connecticut, the schools are great, the taxes are way less. What's going on in New Jersey? We have way too many back offices, we have way too many municipalities of a tiny size, we have way too many redundant services, and we need to tackle that, and we need to tackle it in a very concrete way. And the way to do that is with people who have experience dealing with the budget, dealing with the labor unions and negotiations, dealing with and who have a track record on merging and sharing services. And that's me and my team, Pure Progress Row B. We have the experience to do the job, whether it's development, public safety, anything that we've discussed tonight, any of those topics, I'm familiar with them. I've sat on the board. I've put in countless hours. This leadership is not lacking in confidence. I will be out marketing South Orange. I will be out talking to mayors of other towns, talking to the county executive and other county executives, leading with confidence our way to a brighter future, both downtown and in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
We now invite the candidates for trustee to come up, and we will have questions from the audience. If you have any questions that you would like to submit, Cassie will be happy to collect them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the first question is for candidates for village president. What is our?
I'll go first. I go first because he closed first. So doesn't it mean I go first?
Well, first I have to find out how long you're talking.
I thought it was 1 minute.
I'm not sure, so we'll figure it out as we go along. Be terse. Village president candidates, how can we integrate the needs of Seton Hall students and South Orange residents in regards to housing near the university? What steps have been taken and what can still be done? Sure, Ms. Bauer.
Could you repeat that question? I didn't hear the middle of it. What steps
How
be
can we
taken?
integrate the needs of Seton Hall students and South Orange residents in regards to housing near the university? What steps have been taken and what can still be done?
The Seton Hall students are mostly housed on campus. There are a lot of students that are housed in housing in our neighborhoods, and as well as in neighboring towns like East Orange, Orange, and Newark. I would like to repatriate a lot of the students that are in East Orange, Orange, and Newark into housing for Seton Hall, and I would be happy to support more housing for Seton Hall. And as I mentioned earlier, any developer that thinks he can make a profit on that is certainly welcome to apply to the South Orange Planning Board. That would be, I think, well received. What is not well received is when students are in a house, overpopulating that house and having a lot of loud parties and quality of life violations, and that's one of the things that I did as a trustee over the last 2 years, made sure that landlords for houses like that registered with the town, that there were safety inspections, that the students knew where to get oil when it ran out in the middle of the winter, all kinds of complaints that we would get. So I think we made things much more safe and much more habitable, both for the students and the neighbors of these so-called student houses within family neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy?
I think when we look at housing for Seton Hall students, we need to look at the options that are available. Again, it's supply and demand. There are thousands of students that live off campus, and they live in Newark and Orange and in East Orange, not necessarily because they want to, but because there is nowhere to go in South Orange. And I would disagree that developers will come to us if they think there's a profit. We need to go out and market this town. We need to market this community. We need to promote the valuable assets that we have downtown, our proximity to New York City, our amazing open space for being in such a dense part of, one of the densest parts of the country. We have an incredible amount of open space. We need to package these things up and we need to sell them, because developers aren't coming into this town in droves to build the apartment housing that we know we need. So we need to change something. I guess the second option, the second point would be that that we need to look at our Seton Hall students and try and figure out how many of them not only live off campus but live in these other towns. We need to figure out exactly what numbers we're working with, and we need to build a plan according to that. One of the worst things we could do is to create a development downtown and realize there's not even a need for it. So before going ahead and creating a development project, which is something that we should definitely consider doing for Seton Hall students, is figuring out exactly what the needs of our community are and then developing in line with those needs.
Thank you. Do any of the trustees have a response?
Yes. Both points by the president candidates are well taken, but the simple point is, what do we do now? And how are we handling the challenges now? And just to reiterate what Janine Bauer stated, is that we did put ordinances and resolutions in place to address some of the challenges the residents around Seton Hall were having, and that is making sure that the housing is safe, making sure that they respect the property, making sure that noise is not affecting all the residents around the area, late at night or in the morning. So it's a real balancing act. You have young people, and it's natural for young people to want to let their hair down and not pay attention to the respect of others in this area. So that is the real challenge, is what do we do now? We took that into consideration, and we started with establishing, having landlords register to have some accountability in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with exactly what has been said about it, creating the balance between the student need and the residential need. We put into place a rental registration for the very specific reason of understanding the quality of life of our residents in the neighborhood, as well as the safety of the students. We are very concerned that they will rent single-family homes that meet code and are safe for them to be here. I, as a parent, would want to make sure that my children who were going to a school outside and they were renting a particular facility, that it was safe and it was within code within the village. The other is very, very important that the residents have a quality of life. They are neighbors and they need to work together.
Thank you. For the trustees, what is your action plan for attracting new businesses to downtown South Orange? Who wants it first?
I didn't hear you.
What is your action plan for attracting new businesses to downtown South Orange?
For attracting new businesses to downtown, one of the things we've been talking about for a while is bringing in a business recruiter. But right now, first steps we're taking are working on a SID committee, on a committee for a SID, which is a special improvement district, which is some business owners in town came to us and asked how come we don't have one, and other successful towns have had one in their downtown. And one of the great things we could have with a SID would be to have business recruitment added onto that as an extension of the SID, and they would help pick their own businesses or other businesses they thought would complement their businesses in the downtown. It's something we've talked about at budget meetings and looked into the budget to see if we'd have to add it or if it could be raised through money from the SID, because obviously we don't want to spend a lot of money on it from our perspective. If we don't have to, we can have the businesses do it. Also, the landlords would have to play a very large part in this part, and part of the SID would have to work with the landlords, work with Main Street, and work with the town to help bring the businesses that we want into our downtown.
Thank you. Any of the other trustees want to respond?
Yeah, I think in addition, we put together a vision plan which included the downtown business district and how to attract the businesses to the district. We have a development committee. We have a roadmap for what we need to do within our vision plan, and we have to move forward with it. And part of that is by bringing in a consultant so that we can attract the businesses to the village.
Do you want to speak?
No.
Next question is for the village president candidates. Water safety has developed into a major concern here in South Orange. What are your plans to address the South Orange water concerns and a possibly inadequate and dangerous water system?
Could you repeat that, please?
Water safety has developed into a major concern here in South Orange. What are your plans to address the South Orange water concerns and a possibly inadequate and dangerous water system? Mr. Torpy?
This is a great example, I think, of looking at a municipal issue, is whether it makes sense to keep a department municipally operated or whether to outsource it to a third party. And right now we have a situation where we don't control our water supply. We used to, and actually if you go down to DPW, there's still an old water treatment plant that's down there. And that was a program that actually earned revenue for this town. We outsourced it instead of investing into infrastructure to build it up. And by doing that, we've lost control over our water quality. You know, one of the things that we as U.S. citizens kind of almost take for granted is the cleanliness and purity of our drinking water, and now that's in jeopardy because there's a third party that's operating this that we can't really control. In terms of reacting to something like that, I think if you ask a lot of residents about the water quality, a lot of them don't even know that there's contaminants in the water and that the East Orange Water Commission, which is in charge of treating that water and making sure it's safe and drinkable for us, has failed numerous times from notices from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection to fix this problem and notify residents of this problem. I don't see why this isn't a situation where we couldn't go out to the residents and say, hey, just so you know, there is an issue with East Orange Water Commission right now. There's some problems in the water. It's not necessarily an immediate life-threatening health concern, but it's something we as a village are aware of, and it's something we're going to do something about. instead of just kind of ignoring the problem and hoping that as few people know about it as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
Well, the last thing this village government has done is ignore the problem, and as an environmental lawyer, I certainly will not be ignoring this problem. One of my top priorities is to make sure that East Orange Water Commission, which we are under contract to until 2016, so the entire term plus of the next village president, is to ensure that we have water quality that meets the Safe Drinking Water Act standards. Right now, there is one notice of noncompliance, not even a notice of violation, not numerous or several, and that was procured by the testing that we did and brought to the Department of Environmental Protection's attention because we wanted to get a notice of violation issued, and they have until, I think, April 30th to notify the public, and we're going to go ahead and notify the public anyway, as we already have. It's on our website, it was in the news record, it's out there, and it's also in your annual drinking water report, which every single household gets, not only in this town, but in the entire United States. So TCE is something, and PCE, volatile organics, very common in the underground water in New Jersey. Water does not stop at the border. It's the same water, Maplewood, South Orange, Livingston, so on and so forth. These are Livingston wells that the East Orange Water Commission is using, and I will not rest as village president until those wells are cleaned up or put out of service so that we're not using them. But regardless, we're going to be using a third party's water, whether it's private, New Jersey American Water, or some other water company, or a different municipality, Newark Watershed, East Orange, the Livingston wells, Maplewood uses a different third party. There's not enough water to sustain South Orange, and our underground water is contaminated with the same volatile organic. It's just that we have a stripper on our well from Grove Park. So East Orange has to do the same thing, and it will under my leadership.
Any of the trustees want to address that? Then I have another one for the trustees. Village Hall is in need of significant repairs estimated at over $4 million. How do you plan to address this during your coming term?
Village Hall.
Village Hall.
Who wants it?
You start.
Okay. Well, we've been looking at the problem of Village Hall for many years. At least 6 years ago, I ran on trying to fix up Village Hall. It's a complex problem. It is a historic building. We, in the last few years, have hired an architect to go through everything within the Village Hall to design or redesign and make sure that we put all the pieces together, and we have produced an estimate which is between $4 to $5 million. $5 million figure includes the relocation out and back in for people. But we've done due diligence as well. We have gone out and looked at alternatives to not using Village Hall as our focal point for the village. We've looked at alternative locations, either building another location or renting space or spreading what we currently have throughout other village properties. The other part of it is that we need to understand who can buy or take on Village Hall. It has to be remediated, and it is a historic facility, and it takes money to fix it as well on a private party's part.
I'd just like to add to that that this has been a problem that has been neglected for a very, very long time. So the decay and the challenges of Village Hall just didn't happen in the last 4 years. This is an area of maintenance, repair that should have been handled over the past several decades. And due to the lack of investment in a very, very historic building, we're now in a situation that we either have to make the decision to make that $4 million investment of the icon, the branding of South Orange, or other alternatives that were fully explored, and we're now at the point that we can make the decision because we've explored all the alternatives, and we'll make the best decision about Village Hall and what we're going to do for the residents.
Just wanted to add that, over the years, we've had several buildings that were left in neglect for many years, mostly the 70s, the 80s, and into the early 90s, and we started on a plan of redoing all our buildings. And by the way, the same thing holds true for the water facilities back, and mistakes that were made in the 70s led to a bad contract in the 90s, which we're stuck with today. But for our first choice was to do the firehouse, which there were some issues with doing it, but the firehouse was the first one that we did, and luckily it's now finished, completed, and beautiful. And now we're looking at a long-term plan for Village Hall, the library, Conant Building, Skate House, and the Baird Center. And they're all very important to us. We all have to make sure we do it on an outlined plan that we can afford to do. And at the same time, we also want to look for grants that we can get. And we know that the state historic grants and some other grants will be available, and we have to find out how we can maximize those grants for repairs to the building.
Thank you. The next question is for candidates for village president. What is your vision for South Orange for the next 4 years?
My vision for South Orange is that we will have additional development, retail, and residential development on the 3rd Street and Valley Street. An application will come into the planning board. It will be approved, and construction may be underway. Definitely permitting and other approvals that are required on the state level and county level will be obtained. So I would look forward to construction being underway on that. I think that there will be some zoning changes to Valley Street to significantly upgrade that, and as well, the BIFAS site will be under construction. I anticipate that an application for development for the planning board will go through, and that will be under construction. I think that they will lend themselves to a much more attractive and aesthetically pleasing downtown with an even greater diversity of services and stores. That's what I want to see. I want to make sure that people are coming downtown to shop and eat, and that there's a symbiotic relationship, hopefully through a SID, with SOPAC, where people are going to SOPAC. SOPAC has already brought in, according to last night's presentation, 122,000 people to South Orange. It's one of the critical components of our success going forward, and I see a happy marriage of businesses, services, restaurants, stores, SOPAC, and other amenities in a vibrant downtown with safe neighborhoods surrounding, plenty of beautiful recreation in our terrific parks, and a good relationship. I don't think there's a tense relationship. I think it's normal town gown, but a good relationship with Seton Hall, where we continue to take advantage of their rich resources and they continue to take advantage of our amenities and resources. That's my vision.
Thank you. Mr. Torpey.
I have kind of a grand vision for the place that I grew up in. That's really the reason why I'm running for village president, is to try and see that vision through and provide direction for that. I think South Orange has so much unbelievably remarkable potential. We're an incredible town as it is, but we can do even more. And if we look at what we do in South Orange and what kind of example our local government sets for other towns, I think there's a real opportunity there to be a leader. We have municipal employees and department heads who do innovative things within their departments, and we need a local government that can take those things and show the rest of the world how innovative we truly are, not only at the local government level for our employees, but also the residents and the students and our community members and business owners who do great things. I want to see South Orange in the press every single day, and not because of a flash mob, not because of an armed robbery, but I want to see it there because we're doing incredible things. And I want people to say, out in Illinois, in anywhere in the country, how are we going to improve our town? And I want them to ask the question, what did South Orange, New Jersey do? There is no reason why we cannot be a national, a statewide leader in open government, in innovative public safety solutions. For example, the social media monitoring and analysis that I've been working on with the police department. That's a really innovative program, and not a lot of police departments are using social media, but we are now, and we need to be showing people that we're doing these things. If you ask someone who lives in New Jersey, but perhaps not directly adjacent to South Orange, hey, come out to South Orange, come get dinner with me, hang out. The perception of South Orange is usually, oh, the oranges? Are you sure? We need to change that. We're not the Oranges. We're South Orange. We're a unique community that has assets that are incredible compared to anywhere else that I've ever lived or seen or visited before. And we need to make sure that we have a village president who understands how to do marketing, who understands how to do promotion, because those are the kind of things that are going to bring new businesses and new residents and new shoppers into this town.
Thank you. SOPAC provides a valuable contribution to the community by attracting residents downtown and bringing artists to our community. However, it has placed a financial burden on the village. Do you have an action plan in mind, and how can we reduce the burden on taxpayers? In 2 minutes. Mr. Torpy?
I think one of the best things that the village president can do is build community support for SOPAC. When I talk to people about SOPAC, and as I've been going door to door, to our coffees and to our events, a lot of people say things like, well, I'm anti-SOPAC. Like, what does that mean? This is part of our community. Sure, maybe it wasn't designed the way that we all think it should have been, but it was, and it's here. So let's make sure we're supporting it. If we can get our community behind this, people will go down to go to the movies. People will go to shows. Right now, I know plenty of people who live in South Orange who still go to Maplewood to go to the movies because they don't understand the value that we have right in town. Part of that is a public safety issue, that if people want to go to the movies, why should they choose South Orange over Maplewood or Milburn? We need to, again, think about what incentives and what disincentives exist to bring people here. And if we can build support for SOPAC and build a relationship between our community and SOPAC that people see it as a value, we can move forward much better than we are now. And I think one of those opportunities is looking at expanding our jitney system and making it a full-fledged public transit system. We have 2 mutually exclusive bus systems in this town. We need to be getting Seton Hall students and residents on the same bus together, and if we need to implement a one-card system in South Orange that gives residents access to the recycling center, to the bus, to the library, to the pool, then we need to do that. And we need to combine these bus systems, take advantage of an economy of scale, and what we could do is then work with SOPAC and say, hey, would you like to be a strategic corporate partner to this bus system? We're going to allow you to put a logo on the bus route so that people know that there's a movie theater in their town, and we're going to run our bus line right through the circle every single time. If we can get people down there and break this stereotype, or even make sure that people know that SOPAC exists and that it can offer what they want SOPAC to provide, that's going to be the best way we can support this and move this development forward.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
You know, before I get to the SOPAC question, when you talk transportation, you're talking my language, and I have to say that the concept, any public transportation system loses money, even the best one, they just lose less money. The concept that we would have a public jitney system that couldn't possibly charge more than, a couple dollars, maybe $4 per ride or something like that to go downtown and to circulate in the neighborhoods, that would be very expensive to the village, not only in terms of all the regulatory compliance, but the drivers, the operators, keeping the logbooks, the fuel, and just the general operations and maintenance for the jitneys and the buses themselves. And I was responsible when I worked at the Tri-State Transportation Campaign for getting the first grant. It went to Maplewood, and then it spread to the 6 towns along the railroad line, and then to 32 towns statewide, getting the jitney program and getting New Jersey Transit convinced of that. But the jitney program exists on federal grant monies, federal clean air grant monies. We wouldn't even have the jitney program that we have to ferry commuters back and forth to neighborhoods if it weren't for the federal funds from transportation and air quality laws. So I don't think, if SOPAC's future depends on a circulating bus system, then it's a dim future. Fortunately, it's not a dim future. SOPAC is a linchpin to our economic development and our future development downtown, and by that I mean building construction downtown. We need to incorporate it into a SID, incorporate it into all the promotions and marketing that we do with the business district, all the businesses and the restaurants. And I personally think that convincing the residents that SOPAC is a good thing, and there is a large, I don't know if it's a majority, but a large group of skeptics who are very vocal, convincing them has to do with making the contractual and legal relationship between the village and SOPAC a transparent one, and it hasn't been transparent. And one of the reasons it hasn't been is because SOPAC, quite frankly, hasn't given us the information that we needed when we asked for it, hasn't filed its annual reports with the Charities Bureau and the IRS and so on and so forth when they were due
Thank you.
or when it was required. I'll fix that up and clean it up.
Thank you. Sorry. One last question regarding Seton Hall. What events have been or should be promoted to entice prospective Seton Hall students and to let them know that South Orange is a good town to want to spend the next 4 years of their life, 4 or 5 years of their life in? It's for the, depends on the students. It's for the village presidents. So start with Ms. Bauer.
Sure. I think on prospective student visitation day or days, that South Orange should sponsor specific events for students and their families to make sure they come downtown, to make sure that they have a discount off our restaurants. We can incorporate that into Restaurant Week to be able to go to the stores and see the other sites. I don't know if there's enough time to take in a movie. I remember going around with my son and visiting all the colleges and so on and so forth, and it's a pretty tight time frame between the interview, the tour, and so on and so forth. But generally, you can fit something in the afternoon. I think it would be extremely helpful for South Orange to market itself and show itself to be an attractive place to South Orange students, and particularly to get away from the sort of cloistered idea that, you know, students are going to be on campus most of the time, because we're very fortunate now. We see students walking up and down South Orange Avenue all the time, visiting our restaurants, visiting our stores, as well as other streets as well. But it's become much less cloistered than it used to be, and I think that's an excellent thing.
Thank you. Mr. Torpy.
I think this is one of the areas that we can improve upon a little bit that would really add a lot of value to this community. When we look at what sort of things we do at Seton Hall, again, I'll bring up the Community Emergency Response Team as a really great example, where we brought our fire chief and firefighters up to campus, and we had a classroom that was actually exactly half students and half residents. And they got to know each other, and breaking down those stereotypes that do exist right now between students and community members is really important. And when you look at Seton Hall students walking up and down South Orange Ave, you know, most of the Seton Hall students that I've talked to, as soon as the sun goes down, they don't walk up and down South Orange Ave anymore. People who come into this town, for me, I've lived here for so long, I very rarely think twice about it. But for people who just move out here and then 3 armed robberies happen in 2 weeks, I think that they get a negative perception of what kind of community this is, and it's not even an accurate perception. But those Seton Hall students, I've talked to so many who don't feel comfortable walking around. And if you look at the ridership on the Seton Hall SHU fly, one of the main reasons why that even exists is because students don't want to walk around town. Not every student, but many of them don't feel safe here. So I think the biggest thing that this town can do to try and encourage more students to come out here, and that they can make sure to emphasize when parents and students visit, is that this is a safe, inclusive community where residents and students live and work together in a way that's beneficial for both communities. And those are the sort of ideas that we need to get out there. And I think a lot of that comes back to marketing and promotion. We need to do some perception management. And if people are coming to this town with the idea that South Orange is the same as East Orange, is the same as Orange, we need to break that down. We need to work on solving those problems, and we need to show people that this town is a lot better than that. And by doing that, not only will we be able to leverage more Seton Hall students down here, but for the people that are here and for the people that do choose to come to school and learn in this town, we're going to provide such a better environment. This collegiate environment is something that is so incredibly beneficial for communities. I went to school in a college town that had a bus system that was fully operational, and we can do those sort of same things here and make this a better environment for the university community.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the candidates for sharing their time and their views. Thank you in the audience for coming and for spending this evening and getting informed about the candidates. Special thanks to Seton Hall Village Liaisons, co-sponsors, and Seton Hall Community Relations Department, and League of Women Voters of South Orange Maplewood for sponsoring this event. Make sure you vote May 10th. As League says, bring a friend to vote. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. For further information on voting, you can contact us at the League of Women Voters or go to the New Jersey website, njelections.org. This will be broadcast. Go to the SOMAtv website for dates. And let me remind you again that the deadline for a mail-in application is May 3rd. And also, don't forget tomorrow to vote in the Board of Education election. The school board polls will be open from 2 to 9. The polling place is on your sample ballot. Thank you so much.